So Julie, if you're ready to go, then we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Dixon's virtual Munch and Learn. I'm really glad you're here. And if you're not muted, please take the time to mute yourself right now. And I want to let you know that we are recording this presentation and it will be added to our YouTube channel. And please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find videos and art and horticulture activities at dixon.org on the Dixon at Home page of our website. And you can also get to YouTube from there. And so during the talk, when a question pops up into your head, just go down to the bottom of the screen to the little chat symbol and click on that and type in your question. And then in the end, Julie will answer your questions. So that's another great thing about doing it online instead of live. You don't have to try to remember your question till the end. You can just type it in as soon as you think of it. But today, of course, we have been chatting with Julie Pierotti, and now she is going to tell us a lot more about her favorite manuscripts. Julie is the Martha R.Robinson Curator at the Dixon. She's been there since 2007, I do believe. She got her master's from Vanderbilt University. And so we're very lucky to have her at the Dixon. So Julie, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Lindley. Thank you. And those of us who are just tuning in, I was just kind of thanking Lindley for always putting together such a great Munch and Learn program. She does a great job finding speakers, pretty much 52 weeks out of the year. Oh, and while we're saying thank you, since it's Veterans Day, I just wanted to say, if we have any veterans out there, thank you so much. And also, I don't know if Chantel's on here, but Chantel, our Director of Communications, got us a great article in the Daily Memphian this past weekend, and I hope you all saw it on the St. John's Bible. So that was really exciting to get that press. Okay, Lindley, what do I do here? I'm sharing screen. Share.
It is, I don't see your presentation. So let's try to share it. Okay, things are happening.
Okay, so now I'm going to go to slideshow, right?
Yes.
View.
Good, yeah. Go to slideshow.
Why am I not seeing slideshow?
It is.
Oh, I see it. Okay, sorry. Okay, how about now? We good? Do you see it?
It looks fabulous.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Maybe we should have done the practice, Lindley. I don't know. Anyway, so we got the Daily Memphian article, and I've been really pleased with the response that we've had to the St. John's Bible Show. We're about a month into the exhibition. We have about 2 months left. So I hope you will all come to see it. And when Lindley was asking me what I wanted to sign up for my Munch and Learn, 6 months ago or whatever, I was just thinking, the St. John's Bible is this work of art that there hasn't been a work of art like this in more than 500 years. But I wanted to take a look at where, the works of art that inspired maybe the St. John's Bible, historic manuscripts, these sacred texts that were written, more than 500 years ago, that inspired the St. John's Bible. So I'm
going to interrupt for just a second and say it looks like you're in presenter's view.
Oh gosh. Okay. How do I get out of that?
I would say go back up to slideshow and view.
Okay. View.
Go to slideshow.
Okay. From beginning?
Do from beginning and see.
Do y'all see my extra slides? Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, man. Okay, let me see. Displace it.
And if we just keep seeing it like that, it's not the end of the world.
Did I fix it?
That's it. You did.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
Julie.
Thank you, Lindley. So really, it's been really fun to put this Munch and Learn together to look back at historic manuscripts that were always kind of interesting to me. But the experience of putting together this Munch and Learn, and I was saying this earlier, if some of y'all were in here, is really like the experience of this whole exhibition start to finish. It's the St. John's Bible is such a joyful work of art. It's just to walk through the galleries is a happy experience. It's an inspiring experience. And it feels like just by observing it that you are kind of part of this great tradition of historic illuminated manuscripts. So I wanted to kind of take a look back at some of my favorites, and they're really not just my favorite manuscripts. They are, the history of art's favorite manuscripts. A lot of these, if you ever took Art History 101, then you probably have seen some of these before. And so a great thing about the St. John's Bible, exhibition here is that it has refreshed my memory on these sacred texts, sacred manuscripts, but it's also taught me so much more. So it's more than just a walk down art history memory lane, I think. And if you've been to see the show, we have this 26-minute video that runs in the auditorium that is the making of the St. John's Bible. So if you have the time, it's really great to watch and really understand the process and the skill that it takes to be able to create the St. John's Bible, create this work of art. And you get to see some of the tools that how they use the tools. And then we have the tools that the artists used in the making of the St. John's Bible. We have those on display in the exhibition. And the cool thing, and I don't know if you were able to tune into any of Tim Turnus's his opening lecture, or if some of you are docents, he did docent training for us over 2 days. I think one of the things that he really that kind of like opened my eyes a little bit is in thinking about these tools is the idea that a medieval scribe, somebody who wrote some of the books like this, if they came back, became a zombie or something, came back from the dead and were to walk into this exhibition, they would recognize these tools. And they would recognize the folios themselves. It's this ancient process that the artist used. And it's one thing that I thought was really interesting is the scribes or the artists that created the St. John's Bible didn't just use these tools because that's the way it's always been done. They use these tools, inks, precious metals, whatever, because it's tested by time. There are these manuscripts that were written more than 1,000 years ago that survive and are still vivid and bright. So it just kind of brought that to life, brought what the artists of the St. John's Bible were doing. It kind of clicked in my head. And thinking about how amazing it is that there are these manuscripts that survive that were written, in the year 600, 700, 800. So it is cool to compare them, and we'll do a little bit of that as we go along. So I just wanted to show a map of Western Europe in the medieval period to show the main places we're going to be talking about are in Western Europe. So Aachen, Senegal, Rem, and then in England. And I couldn't get Ireland really in the map here, but these are just some of the places we'll be talking about. And this is where the most notable scriptoria, which is plural of scriptorium, are. And a scriptorium, and I'll say this several times throughout the talk, a scriptorium is a place where manuscripts are made, usually at a monastery. So here are some super early manuscripts, super early Christian manuscripts, I should say, from the early 6th century. And you can see just that these are also done on vellum, which is calfskin, which is the material that the artists of the St. John's Bible used. And really how remarkably well these illuminations have held up over time. But we're going to really start around the year 700 with the Lindisfarne Gospels, which is one of my favorites. I'm going to say this is one of my favorites about 15 times today. So this style of manuscript illumination is called insular, meaning it was made in the, in the British Isles. So Lindisfarne is in Northeast England. And this project, we actually know the leader of the Lindisfarne Gospels project. It was someone named Eadfrith. He was the bishop of Lindisfarne, and it took 6 years to complete this. And this is actually just the Gospels. So if you think about the whole of the St. John's Bible project taking 11 years start to finish, then this, this book taking 6 years just for the Gospels, I guess it kind of makes sense. And I wanted to show some close-ups of it to show you just the amazing artistry that's in this work of art. I'll go back to show you the page that we're looking at. This is called a Chi-Rho page. The X here and the P, and sometimes you get the I, the iota. This is the monogram of Christ. So in Greek, X would be Christos, C, X is C, P is Rho for C-R, and then the I for I. So C-R-I, Christos would be Christ in Greek. But on these Chi-Rho pages, and they're pretty common in especially British illuminated manuscripts, the artists kind of just go crazy with embellishments to it. And they're really drawn upon the Celtic tradition of metalwork. So this type of knots that you get in these illuminations are really particular to the British Isles and the monasteries that are there. And they are indebted to Celtic metalwork tradition. But at the same time, there's all of these animalistic figures. So they're sometimes called zoomorphic. So they look kind of like animals, but kind of not like any animal you've ever seen before. So they're just kind of going all out. But at the same time, you can look at this and think it's really chaotic and kind of crazy. But at the same time, I think there's something meditative about them, about all of the way that the knots kind of interlace with each other, and the swirls and the way the colors kind of blend into each other. So I kind of think about the doodles that you made in school when you were a kid, or even possibly are making right now. So it's almost like that type of meditative process, I think, that goes into making these. This is an incipit page, and there is a Matthew incipit page in the St. John's Bible. I'll show that to y'all in just a little bit. So this is, again, the intricacy of all the knots, and you start to get these forms that look almost like creatures themselves. So the incipit page is the first page of the Gospel of St. Matthew, or there would be an incipit page for St. Mark, St. Luke, and St. John. And the lettering is always really kind of over the top and colorful, and where the artists really strut their stuff, I think, as calligraphers and as scribes. And the illustrations that are based on this kind of metalwork are really really amazing here. And you start to see a little bit more of those zoomorphic forms here, like this little bird, lots of birds and bird type creatures and cat-like creatures that are in here. Also pay attention to the red dots. This red dot border will appear in several other manuscripts that we're going to look at. Lindisfarne was one of the first. Another thing that kind of connects this to the St. John's Bible, I think, is it's the earliest known, the earliest surviving one that we know about, English translation of the Bible. It had some English translations in it. And of course, the St. John's Bible being written in English, it's the first one in a very long time to be written, and maybe the first one ever to be written completely in English. The great thing that Lindisfarne is known for are these pages called carpet pages. And the carpet pages serve several functions, I think. They're aesthetic, yeah, they're beautiful, and where the artist, the scribe, can really show off their skill. But at the same time, they are functional. They provide a visual stop. So this page would be shown before an incipit page. So it kind of marks where you are, marks a stopping point from the page before to the incipit page, to the beginning of the gospel. And they also reference prayer rugs. They have these kind of, and I guess that's where the term carpet page comes from. And they keep you from being distracted by, oops, wrong way, sorry. They keep you from being distracted by any words bleeding over from the page before it. So, but they become these ways for artists to go crazy, really, with what they're able to do with ornamentation. And again, this idea of interlacing lines and knots. This one is referred to as the wine glass carpet page because the cross is made out of these forms that look like little goblets. And that's just kind of a fun terminology for it. But in this close-up, you can see how, chaotic it gets. And a lot of these forms end in little creature heads. So they are, interconnected lines and lacing, but they're also little creatures as well. This is another carpet page from Lindisfarne. Oh, I should also mention, and I was saying this at the before we got started. The great thing about the age we're living in is that Lindisfarne and many other of the manuscripts we're going to talk about today have all been digitized, and you can find them really just by doing a Google search and go to the British Library. For instance, the British Library owns the Lindisfarne Gospels today, and they have digitized every page of it, and you can search it on their website, or you can just kind of click through it on their website, which is really, really awesome, because I don't think any of us are going to be going to the British Library anytime soon, and I actually don't know how accessible this particular manuscript is to the public. This is a facsimile edition, and you can buy those just like you can. I think you can buy facsimile versions of the St. John's Bible, but it does show you how the carpet page relates to the incipit page and creates this kind of dramatic starting point for each gospel. Oh, and another great thing about Lindisfarne is it's one of the earlier manuscripts that has these pages dedicated to the evangelists. So again, we're not illustrating the Bible with these illuminations. They are kind of calling out different aspects of the Bible and its creation. So that's what these evangelist pages are about. The forms are odd. I've always thought that this guy behind, it's like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, kind of like he's Oz hiding back there. The way that the figures are modeled is a little awkward and odd. Sometimes it seems like they should be sliding off the little cushions that they're on. But this is indicative of this insular, meaning made in the islands, tradition of modeling figures through line. So line is very important to these illustrations, and especially to illustrating human figures. We'll get to a different point later on where things change a little bit. So this is Matthew. Matthew's symbol is a winged man. This is Mark. His symbol is a winged lion. So here's Marcus. And then Luke is symbolized by a winged ox, and John with the winged eagle here. So those symbols will reappear in manuscripts over and over again. Most of the time you see the evangelist with their symbol, but sometimes you just see the symbols themselves. These will be pretty standard going forward. Okay, so the Book of Kells. If you were aware of early medieval manuscripts, maybe before this Munch and Learn started, Kells is probably, the Book of Kells is probably the one that you've heard of before. It's considered the high point of early medieval manuscript illumination. As early as the year 1000, it was considered the greatest, relic really of Western illumination, of Western art. It was treasured immediately upon its completion, and it's really the high point of these kind of luxurious illuminated manuscripts. To us today, it's really almost kind of psychedelic, I think, to look at them and all the swirling lines, and how every inch of the page is filled with some kind of illumination. So the Book of Kells is named after the monastery in Ireland that owned it, but it was actually made in Scotland. And I think the story, as I understand it, is it was made in Scotland, and the monastery in Scotland was under attack by Vikings, and the book was taken to Kells, where it was kept. Now, today it's at Trinity College Library in Dublin. Kevin has seen it. Kevin, I don't know if you're on here, but we were just talking about this a little while ago. And I don't know if Kevin was as excited about seeing it as I would have wanted him to be. I don't know. But but it surely is, and you can look at this page and see it's the kind of the high point of this type of art. There's so much going on. Again, this all of this lacy knots that you see throughout it are inspired by Celtic metal work. It's got the zoomorphic forms, so these animal-like forms, but also this is kind of like a Where's Waldo. It's got these human heads and human figures on this page, and throughout the manuscript. So here's one. There's 3 of them on this page. Here's one. Here's another up here, and here's a little angel, and some more little figures over here. So it's kind of like a seek and find, I think, sometimes when you're looking on this page. So again, this would be the Chi Rho monogram page that we're looking at. So the X and the P, and then here's the I of iota. And this is the page where kind of the showstopper piece, I think, where artists really want to lavish the most attention, because it's glorifying the name of Christ, and it's showing that off. But I think there's something also to this that is, in some ways it's glorifying the name of Christ, but it's also obscuring it, because we can you can almost barely make out that this is an X and this is a P and this is supposed to be an I. It's all so decorative and so ornamented. And the little, I wanted to say these little letters down here make up the first words of Matthew's gospel. The generation of Christ was in the wise. So I wanted to show some close-ups of some of the creatures that we see in here. So this is a close-up from the Chi Rho page. So I'm going to show you where we're looking at. See this little thing right here? This is 2 cats, and they're catching these mice. Here are the mice. Beep, beep, beep. And the mice have a Eucharist, the bread of Christ that's used in Catholic services. So the cats are catching the mice and keeping them from eating the host here. So it's got these kind of funny elements to them. See the red dots? I told you they would come back. The red dots are here, are throughout this manuscript as well. So here's some of the fantastical creatures that we see in the Book of Kells. A lot of times, these are the kind of cat-like creatures. And a lot of times they have their mouths open, swallowing something, consuming other creatures, other birds, or just consuming these little knots here. And then you can really get an idea of the knot work and how intricate this was. And to think that this was all, written by hand in some scriptorium that was probably pretty dark, I think. It's just amazing the skill of the artists that produced this. Actually, we think that there were 3 artists who were believed to have produced the Book of Kells. And the funny thing is, this is the Matthew Incipit page. There are errors in the text throughout this book. So again, kind of like in the St. John's Bible, there's errors in here where this is a divine text, the divine word, but it's humans that are writing it, and humans make mistakes sometimes. This is the Virgin and Child page from the Book of Kells. It's the earliest Virgin and Child in a Western manuscript, and it's actually the only image of a woman in the whole book. And I don't know that she looks very feminine. I don't know that the people writing the Book of Kells were around a lot of women. I'm not sure. And the Christ child here looks like a little man, almost like a little man puppet, I think. So the technique is a little awkward, I think, in to our modern eyes. But at the time it was, extraordinary, I think. This is a page with the symbols of the evangelist. So like when we were looking at Lindisfarne, I told you, those pages have each of the evangelists with their symbols. This page just shows the symbols themselves. So the winged man, the lion, the ox, and the eagle. And I wanted to show the portrait of Christ that is in the Book of Kells, just to show all the knots that are in here, but also these images here, the peacocks. We'll see peacocks again in just a little bit. Peacocks are symbols of resurrection and traditional symbols of resurrection and rebirth in the Christian faith, and they appear in manuscripts pretty frequently. This is one of the carpet pages from the Book of Kells. And this book was made with colored ink and gilding on vellum. So pretty much the same materials that were used to make the St. John's Bible. So it just shows you how these materials stand the test of time, and it just kind of makes you appreciate that the St. John's Bible was made to last 2,000 years, or at least 1,900 years. Oh, and if you're into Kells, there's an animated film called The Secret of Kells that came out a few years ago and won a bunch of awards. You can go to YouTube or IMDb and see the trailer for it, and it's supposedly really good. Mallory Sharp, our curatorial assistant, has seen it and said it was great. I actually haven't seen it myself. Maybe that might be a Thanksgiving week, Netflix project. Okay, so now we're going to go into Charlemagne in the Carolingian Renaissance. The Charlemagne was crowned Holy Roman Emperor on December 25th of the year 800. And the period of Charlemagne's reign, and really just all of the 800s, is described as a Carolingian Renaissance because of the emphasis and flourishing of the arts during that century, especially manuscripts. Charlemagne was very generous with monasteries that had scriptoria, and was emphasized the standardization of the text used in the Bible and in worship. So these monasteries received gifts and money and support to create some of the great manuscripts that we'll look at in just a second. So he really focused on representational art and representational art inside of manuscripts at a time when the Byzantine Empire was, was wary of objects and wary of images as iconoclasm. So Charlemagne set up his court, his home base at Aachen, and it became the base of the Carolingian manuscript Renaissance and revival. One of the first ones that was made and commissioned by Charlemagne and his wife Hildegard actually is this one. It's called the Godescalc Evangelistary or Godescalc Gospels, and it's named that because of the artist. The lead of the project was someone named Godescalc, and he actually wrote a poem at the end of this manuscript and signed his name to it, and that's how we know who it is. So this is an image of the fountain of life. And here are peacocks again, 2 peacocks. So I just wanted to point that out, and some of the other creatures. This book, and this is going to become common from, for the next century or so, was made with ink, the ink on vellum, but this purple ink with gold lettering, purple background and gold lettering. So the purple is intended to symbolize Christ's blood, and the gold is his glory in heaven after resurrection. So you see a lot of purple and gold, and sometimes the purple looks kind of reddish purple, and sometimes it's a pretty dark purple. The gold is also there to emphasize the authority of the king, in this case Charlemagne, as successor to the Roman emperor. And this was commissioned before Charlemagne became Holy Roman Emperor. He was king of the Franks at this point. This book is in the Bibliothèque Nationale, and their website is really great. So if any of you are interested in that, I recommend going there. This is the image of Christ's blessing from the Godescalc Evangelistary. So this is an image of Christ. Here is his monogram, Jesus Christ here. So IHS would be Jesus, and XPS would be Christos. And here's Christ giving his sign of blessing. In high school, we used to call this Jesus piece, which is how there a lot of images of Christ look in these kind of manuscripts, and that's just us being silly. And they show him on this cushion that really looks like kind of like a piece of sausage or something. But this will be something we'll see again too. But what I wanted to point out is here, the knots that you see around the frame of the image. So one thing Charlemagne was really, emphatic about was bringing in artists from other parts of the Western world to create works of art for him at his court. So a lot of his work, a lot of work that was commissioned under his reign has various influences in it. This is the image of St. Luke from the Godescalc, and Luke's symbol is the winged ox here. But another manuscript that's commissioned by Charlemagne is this one. It's called the Vienna Coronation Gospels, or sometimes just the Coronation Gospels. This is the book that Charlemagne used on the day he was crowned Holy Roman Emperor on December 25th of 800. So it was that precious to him. And allegedly, it was actually with him in his tomb when his tomb was opened in the year 1000. So it was that important to him. So again, you can see that this is actually purple and gold, but in this case, the vellum has been dyed purple. and the lettering is in gold. As opposed to, the Godescalc one that we looked at that had that strong emphasis on line, the Coronation Gospels have a much more Byzantine influence to them. So maybe in this case, the artist was from the Byzantine Empire and recruited by Charlemagne to come to Aachen, where he was, and create this manuscript. So you see in here, this is St. John, and we'll look at St. Matthew in just a second. But instead of knots in the frame around the evangelist, you have these acanthus leaves that have much, that recall ancient Greece and more ancient Mediterranean civilizations. And just the look of him, that elongated face, is really recalls Byzantine mosaics and other Byzantine works of art. This is St. Matthew's page from the Coronation Gospels. And the modeling, as opposed to, think about like the image of, the Virgin and Child from the book of Kells, and then think about this. So the modeling here is done through color and tone and, and shading, as opposed to just simply lines creating the forms of the evangelists. So this Matthew looks pretty Southern to me, Southern meaning like Mediterranean, either Italian or Greek, more from that part of the world than from Germany, where this was made. So overall, this image, and I think that just the Coronation Gospels in general have this more of a sense of order and calm than maybe, those crazy Cairo pages in the Book of Kells and Lindisfarne. But we go again from calm to back to chaos, I think, with this book, which is the Ebbo Gospels. And the Ebbo Gospels are one of my favorites. I think they're really funky. And this was the one that really came to mind when I first started thinking about this. It draws upon, so this is made around the same time as the Coronation Gospels and draws upon that tradition a little bit. But stylistically, it goes in a totally different direction. It was made for Ebbo, who was an archbishop in France, in Rheims, which is not really that far from Aachen. But you can see in a close-up here of this, that the lines are swirling, they're frenetic. There's this kind of frenzy atmosphere that the artist has created. And this illusionistic landscape that we're looking at here, and just the way his toga that he's wearing has been formed with all of these crazy lines is, just like I said, it's kind of funky. And his face, and here's the close-up, it looks like he's like under the gun, kind of like me trying to get ready for this Munch and Learn, kind of under the gun to get it done. Like he's got this worried look on his face. But here we still see Matthew's symbol, the winged man here. But look at the landscape behind him. It almost looks like, to me, these look like the truffula trees in the Lorax or something. They've got these crazy shapes to them, and the architecture is really just sketched in. But the whole image is full of energy and I think passion and emotion. But I did want to kind of compare and contrast these two, these two illuminations of the same subject. So both of these are St. Matthew, but look at the Coronation Gospels versus Ebbo, and how the energy and the vibe, I guess, as we would say today, is totally different in these two. But there's so many elements of these that are the same. So the podium or whatever drafting table that they're working on is modeled the same way, and they're writing the same way, they're in the same pose, but the energy and the style is completely different. And here are two of the other pages from the Ebbo Gospels, which it combines this kind of energy and that a little bit of chaos, I think, that we saw in some of the earlier, like Kells and Lindisfarne, those pages. but also you get these more, kind of Byzantine and Greek and Roman adornments here on the frame around it. So this is St. Mark, and here's the lion that is his symbol, and here's St. John and his symbol, the eagle. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Utrecht Psalter. It's not exactly love at first sight, I think, with this book. But upon, if you spend more time with it, I think you can see how charming it is and really how important this work of art is in the whole history of Western art. It's in the same vein as the Ebbo Gospels, stylistically, the style of these illustrations, but it is different. It's kind of surrealist. Each of the 150 Psalms are illustrated. So every Psalm has a work of art that goes with it. So there's lots and lots of illustrations throughout here, and it was a massive undertaking. It was actually commissioned by Ebbo, the Archbishop of the Ebbo Gospels, and may have been a gift from Ebbo to Charlemagne's son, or even possibly like a birth gift for his grandson, who would later become Charles the Bald. Maybe he was bald as a baby too. But it's this illustration of text. There's no, symbolic pages or illustrations of the evangelists or anything like that. There's no carpet pages. It's illustration of the word. So really we have the Psalms themselves and the artist's illustrations to go along with it. And it's just red, black, and brown ink. It's called the Utrecht Psalter, so Psalter meaning a book of Psalms, because this manuscript is now housed at Utrecht University in their library. So here's a detail that shows how just kind of the energy of the illustrations is similar to the Ebbo Gospels. And also I wanted to point out the script that's used here. It's all capital letters and kind of in a style that looks back to ancient Greek and Roman manuscripts too. And this detail shows our progression from the Coronation Gospels, and here's the Ebbo Gospels, and then here's a scribe in the Utrecht Psalter. So it's kind of the same pose and same lines and same energy in the Utrecht Psalter that was in the Ebbo Gospels. Okay, moving on to the Lindau Gospels. This is actually the only one of these books that I think I've seen in person. It was named after Lindau, the abbey where the book was held for 300 years, but it was actually made here in Switzerland at St. Gallen, as it's sometimes known. This was a monastery that was known, it was a royal favorite and was known for its wealth. It was known for its scriptorium and for its amazing library that I found this image of today. I thought I'd share that with y'all. So you may have seen the cover before. It's really exquisite and really special. And this is another kind of art history 101 thing. It's covered in pearls and jewels and gold. And I had actually never seen this kind of view of the cover of the Lindau Gospels that shows you these clusters. So these are the jewel clusters that we're looking at a close-up of, how they are raised up. So the figure of Christ crucified is done in a method, a technique called repoussé, where it would have been kind of punched out from the back. So they wanted to really protect the repoussé work, and of course the sculpture of the figure of Christ here, or the relief of the figure of Christ. So all of this is raised up so that when you open the book, these things being raised up protect the figure of Christ from being, banged up or anything like that, from the book actually being used. But you can see that it's raised up here, and it's got these kind of animal-like feet. So even this is turned into some kind of ornamentation, something more than what it looks like, and more than meets the eye, I think. And then this whole thing here, this little area here, is described as being almost architectural and like a city itself. I will recommend this work of art is in the collection of the Morgan Library and Museum in New York. And their website has a great, just great pages, web pages on the Lindau Gospels, and a really informative video on this too. I recommend y'all just go to Google Lindau Gospels, and Morgan Library will be the first thing that pops up. And I recommend watching that. This is the back cover of the Lindau Gospels. It was actually made earlier and then applied to the book. So you can see it wasn't quite big enough. So they made this extender to make this back cover fit on the Lindau Gospels. And this really shows off a lot of that Celtic metal work that we've been talking about. This was made in Salzburg about, maybe 100 years before the front cover was. The scribe, this is the scribe for the project, was someone named Folkart. And again, we're looking at the purple background with gold lettering. So we've seen that time and again. But this one, again, has this great combination of these leaves that, call back to more ancient art, ancient Greek art or Roman art. But we also get some of this knot work that is drawn from Celtic tradition. And there's these beautiful large initials on these incipit pages that I think is just really, really extraordinary. I love these. Okay, so like I said, yeah, go to the Morgan Library's website and you can get a look at their pages and watch this great video on the Lindau Gospels. Okay, so we're going to move ahead in time just a little bit. Oh, here's a look at the inside of the Morgan Library. When we're able to travel again, if you go to New York, it's definitely something you got to do. So we're going to skip ahead in time to the later medieval period. I always loved this page from the Bury Bible, really just because this was on a cover of a textbook I had in graduate school. And I always thought this guy here looked like he was holding his nose, like these guys smelled really bad or something. I just always thought that was fun. But you can see the frame around here recalls like what we saw in the Lindau Gospels and some of the other books. Okay, so our final manuscript historic manuscript we're gonna look at is this one, the Très Riche de Jean Duc de Berry. This is really, again, one of the highlights of Western art and considered the pinnacle of French manuscript illumination. It was made, we know the artists that made this manuscript. It was three brothers called the Lembourg brothers, and it was made for this man, the Duc de Berry, who was the brother of King Charles V, and he was a major manuscript collector and patron of the arts in France. So what is a book of hours? A book of hours was kind of a hot luxury item in the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. It was a book of prayers that you could recite at different times that you would recite at different times of day and throughout the year. So something that's kind of common in books of hours are these calendar pages. And the calendar pages in the Duc de Berry's Book of Hours are really the most famous and so vivid and beautiful. So they show seasonal events for either the nobility, and that's what we're looking at here, because here's the Duc de Berry. And this is a New Year's Day feast. So this is January. And they also have these kind of zodiac charts above each page of each calendar page. And then we go from the nobility to the peasant. So you get this kind of back and forth between calendar pages depicting nobility and pages depicting peasants. So this is February, it's cold outside. And here's a woman who's heating her toes by the fire to kind of warm up, a peasant woman. So there are these great like genre scenes of everyday life, and really kind of one of the first major examples of this type of subject in an illuminated manuscript, and showed that these scenes, average people, had a place in these precious illuminated manuscripts. I always thought this book reminds me of Giotto's Arena Chapel in Padua, where you get these, Romanesque vaults here, and then that rich blue of the ceiling, and the stars on the ceiling. I always love a blue ceiling with gold stars on it. This is the page of May. So this one is depicting May Day. And a lot of these have these castles or chateaux in the background. And those are all properties that belong to the Duc de Berry. So it's a very personal book in that way. It was made for him. But the blues that are in it, all of the colors are really, really beautiful. And I wanted to kind of end on this because I think it makes a good connection to our exhibition with the Book of Hours. We have this Book of Hours in our show that's from the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library in Minnesota that also sent us the St. John's Bible. So this is a Book of Hours showing a scene from the Annunciation here. So here's the angel Gabriel going to Mary with her book, maybe her Book of Hours, her prayer book open. And here it is installed in the Donovan Gallery at the Dixon. So this is the Book of Hours here. We also have a Megillah, a scroll from the Temple Israel Museum. So before you go in to see the St. John's Bible, which is my new favorite manuscript, you get to have a look at this manuscript tradition in the flesh, really, as opposed to seeing it on the screen here. But the St. John's Bible artists, led by Donald Jackson, really drew upon the rich tradition of manuscript illumination when creating their Bible, their version of the Bible. And when you look at a page like this, you think the colors are so bold and bright and that's so daring. But when you think back at this blue, it's not so different from the blue that was used in this Book of Hours. So I think, like I said, they're drawing upon these great traditions. And the Ecclesiastes page, which is one of the most beautiful, and this is in our show. It may seem chaotic, but we've seen chaotic pages before, in pages in books like Lindisfarne and the Book of Kells. So there were precedents, but that the artist followed, but they kind of took it in a more modern direction. I also love the raven here too, and I really recommend the catalog that goes along with this show. If y'all haven't checked it out, I think it's really worth reading. It helps bring some of the pages that we have on view in the show to life. And then I wanted to call out this page too. The sower and the seed page is really special. And I know Tim Turnus has showed all of us this little error, kind of the way that they fixed this error, how the writer left the line out. But I also wanted to show you that, the way that the artist created this in this frame, decorated frame, is not so unlike some of the pages that we've seen, like the evangelist pages that we looked at earlier. And then, of course, with the genealogy of Christ page in the Matthew Incipit that's on view in the Wilmot Gallery, I thought this made a nice connection to the carpet pages and incipit pages that we've seen in some of the earlier books. And I couldn't get a really great picture of the folio that we have downstairs, but just to show you kind of a modern version of the carpet page and the incipit page next to each other. I also love the text call outs in the St. John's Bible, particularly this one, and how this one kind of pays respect to the order of St. Benedict and their first rule being listen. So you see the words hear and listen pulled out in the St. John's Bible throughout, and even in our exhibition that only has a select number of folios. And if you attended Tim Turnus's opening Zoom, I think everybody agrees that this creation page is just amazing. And it may be my new favorite because I think it's such a, as Tim says it, but it's really true, such a wonderful invitation into the St. John's Bible, but really an invitation for conversation. Everybody I've walked through the show with, it kind of gets you going and gets you comfortable talking about what you're looking at and what you think you're looking at. So, and that's one of the great things that we can do. And so many of these manuscripts that we looked at today, they're in a library somewhere. And like Kevin was saying, the Book of Kells, the day he saw it, it was open to one page. Now, if you go another day, you'd see another page. And we have this wonderful opportunity to look at so many of the pages of this book in this exhibition. So I'm really grateful for that, because once it gets bound, we won't have this opportunity anymore. It'll be at St. John's and it'll be used by their clergy up there. And so I think that, maybe this is, I think this is my favorite page maybe in the St. John's Bible, but I think I'm in good company. I think someone else likes this page too. I found this picture. I thought it was fun. So yeah, those are kind of my favorite manuscripts, but I always try to recommend for further reading. And if you're into historic illuminated manuscripts, and maybe you are, I thought I'd suggest these two Instagram accounts. The Morgan Library really posts a lot of interesting information about historic manuscripts. And there's a page called Medieval Art that does a lot with this type of work. And like I said, I encourage you all to check out the St. John's Bible book, The Making of the St. John's Bible. It's really interesting. And then there's a book that's coming up, going to be published next year on early next year on medieval manuscript illumination, which I think is kind of fun and timely. I've put it on my Amazon wish list. And also, I just wanted to give a plug for Tim Turnus, who's the director of the St. John's Bible Project. He's going to be doing a Q&A session on Zoom on December 15th. So that'll be kind of our tours at 2 that day. And really, it's just you sign on and ask him questions. He really knows everything about the St. John's Bible and the way it was made and the traditions that the artist drew upon. So I encourage you all to mark your calendars for that. You can go to the Dixon website, and I think, Lindley, maybe you can go ahead and sign up for it. So that's all. I just wanted to thank you all for spending time with me. Whew, I made it maybe just in time. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but thank you so much, guys. And really, please be sure to come see the show. It closes January 10th, so you got a little time. And it really is a great experience.
We have a few questions. I'm gonna kind of pick a few of them. Great remarks about how beautiful everything is. And let's see. You took your page down, so I'm not going to ask you to go back to.
Oh, I can.
There was one question about, I think it was from the Lindisfarne. What is the writing at the bottom of the page? I'm not positive which page that is, but I think it was from the Lindisfarne.
Should I go back and share my screen? Let's see.
Sure, we can try it.
Okay. Yeah, boy.
If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
Okay. Did I find it? Okay. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Which page, which gospel was it?
I think it was the Lindisfarne.
Okay.
I'm not positive, but I made a little note.
Okay, this is the Lindisfarne Gospels, and I am not going to even attempt to translate this, but I do think this one is that generatio, where you're talking about the generations of Christ. So with the Matthew page, kind of like in the St. John's Bible, where they have the genealogy of Christ. I would think that might be it. I don't know if somebody else can pipe up with specifics about the question.
Well,
Okay.
we'll go on to a question that Mallory has. Do we know if any women were allowed to be scribes?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. There were, monasteries, the Lindau Gospel, which ended up spent, 300 years, I think, in Lindau. That was a, what do you call a monastery for women? And blanking on the name, but it was a nunnery, I guess. I don't know. I don't know that, I don't know about women being the scribes for these. I don't know that I don't think it's out of the question, but the ones that we do know about are men.
Okay, and
the monasteries had housed these scriptorium, and very few people other than religious, religious clergy knew how to read and write in this period.
well, Kevin wanted to make sure everyone knows that he was deeply moved when he saw the Book of Kells. He says,
"Oh, Kevin,
a clear memory this morning of the page I saw, which set off Julie Pierotti. I do remember having a Guinness at Sheehan's pub afterward." So he clearly remembers the day and seeing it. And Barbara Williamson is relieved to know that he remembers and such amazing things. And also she says that you are a saint, Julie. So that's and George commented that the Ebbo art is almost woodblock-like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the lines, the outlines are really strong in that. I see what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. And I was curious, we think of gold coming from the New World, and this is before that. And so do you know where they got the gold for the lettering, for the cover, the beautiful cover we saw? Do you know where that gold came from?
No, I don't. That's a tough question. That's a good one. I'll have to look into see where they sourced that. But I mean, it would have been gold leaf, just like the St. John's Bible artists used. But you're right; it's such a precious material that it was only used in the most kind of lavish of these manuscripts. So, like the Ebbo Gospels has it, and of course the Coronation Gospels, because that was made for Charlemagne. But the Utrecht Psalter is a little bit more rustic, in that it's just the black ink, the kind of sepia brown ink, and the red ink.
Well, we've got one more question.
Okay.
And it is from Patricia Bundy. She wants to know if these Bibles were intended for everyday use.
Yeah, I mean, so like books of hours, of course, were and psalters like this were intended to be used, because they had these books, I mean, these prayers in them, or these scripture readings in them that people would refer to throughout the day. Like the Coronation Gospels was used. It was used on on Charlemagne's coronation day. So they're kind of ceremonial, but also functional, but were also used and prized and precious. So yeah, I mean, I think all of these, and just like the Lindau Gospels has this type of protective covering that's meant to protect the cover while it was being used, while it was open. So these are made to be used. Of course, they're used by kind of a select few people, and either royalty or by the archbishop or these high-ranking people within the church. They're not for, you and me to use. But yeah, they were all made to be used. And that's the amazing thing, that is, it's just amazing that they've survived as well as they have, is because they were used. And that's the whole point of this, and really with the St. John's Bible too. It's meant to be used, but the materials are up for the challenge of being used. I think they're durable and made to last.
Well, very good. That was the last question.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
thank you, Julie. That was great.
Thanks.
And,
Thanks for sticking with me, guys. That was kind of long.
well, if anyone, before we close out the meeting, if anybody wants to unmute and say thanks to Julie, I'm sure she'd appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Paul, thanks, Julie. It was great.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Julie. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging in there.
Well, I didn't feel like, I felt like it was just a minute.
Oh, thanks. Me too.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Oh,
Thank you.
Kevin. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Tune in next week. I don't know what Lindley's got, but I'm sure it's something good.
It's Dale Skaggs.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to miss Dale.
Plants from the Bible, right?
I believe it is.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Yes, it'll be
So
great.
go ahead and register today. So I get it and put it on get it in my schedule. It'll be fun.
Good idea. Yeah, we're knocking it out of the ballpark these next couple of weeks. Julie and then Dale.
Yeah, we got a fun group. Yeah, Dale will do a good job on that. I'm sure.
Okay.
Bye. See you.
Close everything out.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Julie. Thanks for coming,
Thanks.
See
everybody.
you in a bit, Julie.
See you, Glenn.